Hi, my name is Nathan, and I'm here to show you how to get started using AutoTransform to improve the quality and modernization of your code base over time. So, first of all, first thing we do is we will install AutoTransform. So we want the latest version, which at the moment of recording is 1.0.7a3. So first things first, we pip install that. Now that's good. You'll see that I'm here in this AutoTransform test repo. You'll want to run the next command from within whatever repo you're trying to get started in. Um, and so that command is going to be AutoTransform init. We are going to use GitHub for this config. Now, when entering the GitHub token, you can either choose to enter the token here, and it will be stored inside of a config that's in your Python package. Now, if you do this, that token is stored in plain text in that package. So if you're concerned about that, if this config is going to be used, or if this computer can be used or device can be used by other people, you probably don't want that token stored in plain text somewhere where other people might be able to access it. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. Instead, you can use your bash profile to store the token information somewhere that you can use. So, or you could set environment variables, I should say, to do it. So, first we are going to skip this token, right? We don't need this. The base URL for GitHub API requests, this would be if you use GitHub Enterprise. In this case, I'm not using GitHub Enterprise. This is on base GitHub's or github.com. So we're going to skip that. We aren't using Jenkins. We don't have any custom components, so we'll skip this as well. Our default local runner will be fine for us. Our default GitHub runner will also be fine for us for the remote runner. Okay, now it's checking to set up. This sets up kind of your personal config. Now we need to set up the repo. So yeah, let's get the repo set up. We can use the previous GitHub URL. Yep, that's fine. Yep, continue using the previous stuff. That's all good. Use GitHub Actions for AutoTransform. Yes, we would like to use GitHub Actions. So this is going to be how our repo kind of does things remotely. Enter the name of the base branch of your repo. That's going to be main. Enter the fully qualified name of the repo. In this case, that's nathro/autotransform-test. Should we automatically merge approved changes? Yep. Automatically abandon rejected changes? Yep. Automatically update stale changes? Yes. Number of days to consider something stale? Let's say 3. Would we like to include the sample schema? Sure. That will give us something to kind of look at after this initialization is done. It also tells us kind of how we're using the local time to figure out what the base time is. And now we need to apply a modifier to the local time for scheduling. So this would be if the local time on your machine isn't the local time that you want to use remotely. This basically is when we're setting up scheduling, we tell it that we should run on the 7th hour of the day or something like that, right? So we need to figure out how do you determine what the 7th hour of the day is because time zones are things. And in this case, we'll continue to use the local time here as the base, so we don't need to add any modifier. Should we run on the weekends? No. Add a schema to the schedule? No, we're not going to add any right now. Everything is set up now. Please ensure that there is a repository secret of AutoTransform GitHub token. So this is basically how we are going to get the workflows to set things up. So let's take a look at the things that it's set up so far. We've created a bunch of workflow files. the manage file, run, schedule, update. So these basically are just the files that kind of are responsible for figuring out how to actually get things done. You can see here that it's all just kind of normally set up. All we do is we check out uh, the repository, um, we set up Python 3.10, we pip install, we get pip upgraded, um, we install AutoTransform, we install any requirements, and then we actually manage in this case. And here's that secret that we talked about here. And you can see run is effectively the same thing, except now it's running a different command. It's doing AutoTransform run, and similar ideas for schedule and update. So that's what these are all doing. And you can see here there's these environment variables, AutoTransform config, AutoTransform GitHub token, and AutoTransform change. AutoTransform change is just used here to tell AutoTransform what particular change it's updating. But these two are the environment variables that I referred to earlier that you can use to set your GitHub tokens. So AutoTransform config environment tells AutoTransform to try to pull configuration information from environment variables, and AutoTransform GitHub token is the environment variable that is used for GitHub uh, for finding the GitHub token. So that's all these workflow files. We also have another folder here called AutoTransform. First, this has a config file. This is just the configuration that we set for the repository itself, not for our personal configuration, but for the repository. Then there's the manager file. This is the thing that's responsible for determining how AutoTransform manages outstanding changes, how it figures out what it wants to do with any outstanding changes. This file has a couple of pieces to it. First, it's got a repo. This tells AutoTransform what the actual repo is and how to interact with it. And then it's also got steps. Now, each of these steps is basically going to be kind of a condition and a set of actions to take if that condition passes. So starting from the top, we have this condition, which is review state equals approved. So this is saying if the change has been approved, then take the actions. And the actions in this case is merge. By default, if a step passes the condition, none of the future steps are acted on. However, you can set continue if passed here. So if we wanted to do this, we would do continue if passed true. And if you set this, then it will continue past this step even after executing the actions here. But we don't want to do anything if it's been approved, because all we want to do is just merge. The next one, review state equals changes requested. So this is if the change has been rejected, then we want to abandon it. And abandoning in this case would not only close the PR, but also delete the branch associated with the PR. And then lastly, updated to go greater than or equal 259 200. So this is just 3 days, which was our setting before in terms of seconds. So this is just saying if it was updated more than 3 days ago, then run the action update. And update in this case, what updates do is they just rerun the transformation against the base branch. So they don't actually try to rebase. They just instead try to rerun the same transformation with the same information against the newest version of the base branch. And so that's kind of the manager and all the stuff associated there. Don't need to save any of that. Requirements here. This is just any Python packages that need to be installed. Because we had the default schema, or excuse me, the sample schema stored here, we have black as a requirement because the sample schema uses black formatting. Next up, we have the scheduler. The scheduler has this base time, so this is just finding a Monday at midnight in your local time with any modifier that you used. These excluded days are telling AutoTransform, which days of the week should you not run on? Starting with 0 equals Sunday. And so 5 and 6 would be, or excuse me, 0 equals Monday. And so 5 and 6 is Saturday and Sunday. And so having it set up like this means that it's just not going to run on the weekends. So no scheduling will get triggered on the weekends. And then we have our schemas here. This are the schemas that are scheduled in some way. First up, we have black format, or I shouldn't say first, the only one we have in here is the black format one, which is our sample schema. And it's scheduled to run every day at 7 a.m. All right, very simple, very straightforward. Next up, we have the schema map. The schema map is just let's make this a little better formatted so it's easier to read. Here. So the schema map basically just tells AutoTransform how to find the files that are used to kind of put together a schema based on the name of the schema. And so it's just the name of the schema mapped to the type. So this is a file schema. So when we say black format, we're looking for a file. And the target is where that file is located on the machine. And so in this particular case, the file is located at home, nathro.local, blah, blah, blah. But we can update this to just be AutoTransform /schemas. So we can update this to just kind of be relative to the root of the repository. Because this has AutoTransform in the name, it kind of messed with how it picked this target. But this should be good at this point. So it's in the AutoTransform /schemas /blackformat.json. And then we look at our schema. This is the last file that was added. This is the black format schema, which is our sample schema. It uses black to format any file any Python file that has the @black format pattern in it. And so this is just input is get grep. So we're saying, okay, let's find any file that has this pattern in it, and the pattern is @black format. The next important part of this is the filters. The filters are just saying, okay, given that I have these files, which ones do I actually want, right? And so we're going to apply a regex filter, which takes a regex on the name of the file. And the pattern we're looking for is // or $// $. So basically anything that ends with .py is what we're looking for. So that's our filters here. So this is going to filter us just to Python files. The next important piece is the batcher. The batcher is the thing that kind of says, okay, given all the files, how do we separate them into different component PRs? So this way we can say, instead of just creating one PR for each schema, maybe we want to create PRs based on the directory or based on the owners of the files, whatever it happens to be. So in this particular case, the batcher that we're using is the single batcher. This batches everything together into its own PR. So each file is its own PR. So single meaning, single file per pull request. The title that's going to be put on each of these batches, or excuse me, single doesn't do a single file per PR. I'm saying that backwards. Single says create a single PR that contains every file. So that's kind of how that batcher works. This is going to format all Python files is the title of the pull request that it's going to create, and in the body of the pull request it's going to say apply black formatting to all Python files with @black format. So that's kind of what all of this stuff means. Next, after the batcher, we have the transformer. The transformer is the thing that is actually doing transformation. So we're using a script transformer here, which tells AutoTransform that it's going to invoke some script in order to actually execute the transformation. And the script in this case is black. So that's the script, and then here are the args that it's going to pass. -L, 100, and then you'll see this bracket bracket key bracket bracket. So what this says is you should replace this with the key of an item. And the key in this context is going to be a file name. So this argument will get replaced with the file name. And we have timeout of 360, so 360-second timeout. And per item true here means this is going to run the script once per item in the batch, rather than run it on the once per batch entirely. So that's why we have the key here that's saying each item is going to get run once, and for that item, we're going to replace this key with that item's path. Next up, we have validators. These are just run after the uh, the transformation is done to make sure that the code base is in a good state. None are really needed here. Commands, these are run after validation to do any kind of post-processing that is needed. So these, we again don't need any. So you might use these for like building or code generation, stuff like that. And lastly, in terms of the things that are actually responsible for making changes, we have the repo. The repo kind of tells AutoTransform how to interact with the source control system. So in this case, we have a GitHub repo. So this is saying we're using GitHub. The base branch is named main, and the full GitHub name of our repo is Nathro/AutoTransform-test. So this is telling it this is where you can find our stuff. And so by using this repo in conjunction with our configuration settings that include a GitHub token, AutoTransform will be able to create things, commit them, push them to the repository, and open pull requests. And then the last thing that's in here is this config. This is just kind of configuration for the schema itself. In this case, we have the schema's name, which is black format, and we have the allowed validation level. The allowed validation level in this context is warning, and so that's saying if one of the validators fails, but it gives a failure level of warning, that's okay. That's fine. That doesn't mean that anything is wrong. And that kind of covers all of the stuff that's generated here. And between all of this, we're able to actually get started on running AutoTransform, which is what I will get to in the next video.